processes of relating to Hashem. One is where Hashem initiates the relationship, sends us a bid for connection, which is called the Israsid Le'ela. That suddenly a person, even though he didn't earn it, just starts to feel inspired in his davening for Hashem, has a moment of clarity and connection. And then from there, hopefully he then starts to do his, based on that inspiration, starts to put the work in from himself. The second model is that a person initiates the relationship even though he doesn't feel, even though he hasn't been inspired, he just does the work that he needs to do. And as a response to that, Hashem responds by, I wouldn't say maybe making it easier for him to serve God, but for him to be inspired and actually feel something. So one is Isra Sedila Sata that leads to Isra Sedila Eila. One is Isra Sedila Eila that leads to Isra Sedila Sata. And now that Alter Rebbe has been talking about the second one, where Hashem initiates, starts off by initiating, and what happens is that very often that inspiration comes and then it goes, and when it leaves, it's as if it never was there in the first place, because the person didn't then take that inspiration and put it to work and make it relevant and real in his own life and change his animal soul as a process of this. So we're in the middle of reading, and what we're going to do is we're actually going to read for a little bit, for a few more lines, because we are pretty much, yesterday we ended up in the middle of an idea. So we're going to continue reading until about each Mazras Tefillah, and then we'll go out and we'll elaborate. But my goal is to finish section 1 and get to chapter 2 today. The chapters are an invention of this. If you go into the Lakotei Torah, there's no chapters, maybe there's paragraphs, but here it's divided nicely, so we're going to hopefully finish chapter 1 today. And what chapter 2 starts to do is takes everything we learned in chapter 1 and then bring it back to the verse of Adam Ki Yakriv Mikem, and shows us what we can actually learn. How everything that we just described is taught in the Torah by the wording of Adam Ki Yakriv Mikem in that verse. So, on the top of page 14, we see that the Alter Rebbe says, as we see that there are many people who get excited by God, even though they don't know why, they woke up the same person, and yet something changed in their davening, something changed in their day where they suddenly felt inspired and excited. And then, after some time, that love for God, that inspiration disappears. And the Alter Rebbe now is explaining, we're in the middle of explaining, why is that? Why is that the case? That the person felt so inspired, and then he just crashed back down to where he started. So we're going to continue reading inside on the second paragraph, even though we might have already, I think that's where we're holding, right? Vahainu, the second paragraph on page 14. So Vahainu, the reason for this, the reason for why there are many people who came to the Alter Rebbe and shared, Rebbe, I was so excited about God. My davening was like on this amazing streak. I was feeling things for God, and then suddenly, one day, it just disappeared. What's going on? What's wrong with me? The Alter Rebbe is saying there's nothing wrong with you. This is the nature of an Isra Sedila Eila. And this is the downside of an Isra Sedila Eila if it's not followed immediately by an Isra Sedila Sata. So Vahainu, this is because Shehi Be'emet Ha'ara Milamala, that the truth is that the inspiration that the person felt was not his own. It was from God. It was an inspiration, an awakening from above. Rak, and the only purpose for this was Isra Sedila Eila. The only purpose or reason why he had this awakening from above was la'ayr Isra Sedila Sata, to awaken within the person his initiative and his efforts. God shines his countenance on certain people at times where he wants them to come close. He doesn't inspire them for the sake of inspiring them. He inspires them for the sake of motivating them to then put in their own work. Because at the end of the day, the work that we put in is the only thing that's really valuable. There's a story that there was a very rich man who died and went up to heaven, and they said, the angels that were guarding the gates of heaven, good morning, said, you got to pay up if you want to get in here. And he said, oh great, perfect, I've got lots of money. He started to show him all the money that he had in his account. He said, no, up here we don't take money, we take receipts. Receipts. What have you donated? What have you given? That's the currency that we accept here in heaven. And that's the idea, that God doesn't care about what we have and what we have for free. He cares about what we did with that, the hard work that we did with that. We said that an example of Isra Sedila Sata is davening, and I was actually thinking this morning, another example is tzedakah. very much. Charity. That's a real effort that comes from us. Okay, so vahanifkusa. You guys familiar with this word? If you're learning Gemara, have you heard of nafkamina? Does that come up? Nafkamina. Nafkamina means what is the difference? So this is an Aramaic term. Vahanifkusa. So the difference. Bein mashe besrusa de sata, between an arousal from above is strusa de le'ela, then initiating an arousal from below, initiating an arousal from above, ubein, and between is strusa de sata, us putting in our work, hanimshach, that then draws down, rak mitzad is strusa de le'ela, that is drawn down from in strusa de le'ela. So what's the difference? What's the difference between me initiating without any inspiration versus me initiating after me being inspired? Okay? So here's it. What is the practical difference between the two systems? Whether there is first an Isra Lasata from the person who causes an Isra Leila, or whether the person's Isra Lasata is only a result of Hashem's Isra Leila that came first. So the question is, I look at a person who's working on themselves. They're giving charity. They're doing the hard work to pray. One person woke up in the morning feeling uninspired and pushed themselves to give charity. One person woke up in the morning feeling inspired, and as a result of that inspiration, gave the charity. The action is the same. The Isra Sata looks the same. The Alter Rebbe is asking, though, what's the difference? Is there a difference if that person was first awakened from above, and as a response he acted this way, or the person was acting from no emotion? You get the question? Yeah? Okay. And the answer is like this. The difference is, Shekasher yesh isrus lasata mamish. When there is what we call a real isrus lasata, where the person pushed himself just from himself, not from any things that he got for free and any inspiration that he got. Al yadei yegias nefesh, through the toiling, the hard work of his soul. Azai then hu davar sheyachol leiskayim la'ad. This is something that's able to last forever, which is a big statement. When we put in the hard work from ourselves, not having depended or piggybacked off of some sort of inspiration from outside of ourselves, this is something that can last forever. Now, there's different ways that we can understand that, but the way that the Alter Rebbe here is going to explain it is that what happens when we initiate is that we push or we start off this cycle. I've initiated, and what happens when I initiate? I put the hard work in. God then responds by inspiring us. So I work, and suddenly, as a result of the work I put in, I feel something. I feel some sort of connection to God. I feel some sort of inspiration. And then what do I do with that inspiration? Because I'm already used to putting in my work. I take that inspiration and I put it back into more work. You know what I'm thinking of right now? And I've used this marshal before, but like, what's it called when people invest and then it grows over time? Stocks, but what's it called? Compounding interest. Compounding, right? I put in money, and then that money grows a little bit. And then the money that grows goes back in, instead of me using it, right? Goes back in and grows more. And it's the cycle, and that's how the wealth is built, right? So I think that's very much an example of what the Alter Rebbe is going to be telling us here. We'll read inside. If I'm the one who starts off by putting the money in, by putting the effort in, God's going to respond. I'm going to feel something. And because I'm already used to taking what I've been given, and because I'm used to working hard and not waiting for things for free, I'm going to keep it there. I'm going to keep that inspiration not as, a free trip, a free ride to ride the wave of the inspiration, but to take it straight away and put it to work. What happens after I've taken the inspiration, put it to work? God inspires us again. And this is a cycle, a compounding effect that can happen and that could last forever. So the Alter was saying that when we initiate, when we put the hard work in, even when we don't feel, when we can own our Judaism and this avoda, it's something that can last forever. And as he will now explain. Shahari, since Ayadei Israsat Lasata, through him putting in his own effort. This then awakens, triggers almost, Israsat La'ela, God inspiring us, which then shines and is revealed in his soul, in an internalized way, in a revealed way. Since he prepared his heart for this before. So we can always say, what's the difference between an inspiration from above? Now I'm switching the question. An inspiration from above that comes after an inspiration from below versus an inspiration from above that comes before an inspiration from below. What's the difference? Well, we just read. What's the difference?
That it's eternal. It's something that lasts forever because you put in the work.
Because you put in the work.
First.
I said. And we spoke about this, right, in the context of money as well. If you win the lottery, you haven't prepared yourself internally, mentally, emotionally for what to do with all that money. It's going to come and it's going to go. It's not something that can last forever, right? And so too, if we haven't prepared ourselves for that inspiration, and then we suddenly just get this incredible spiritual feeling, we don't have anything to do with it. It's nice. We can ride the wave of it while it's there, but we don't have the vessels to actually hold on to that. We don't have the tools to say, oh, this is how I ground this. This is how I make this real for me. And so it comes and it goes. But if it comes after I've already done that effort, then I've already built myself up to be able to hold on to that. Okay? So this is something that then the inspiration has where to go. It has a purpose to actually not a purpose, but it has it has a vessel to shine through and something to hold on to it, because he prepared his heart for this before. And therefore, al yadei zeh, through this revelation from God, yiten koach va'oz, it gives him strength and power, benafsho, in his soul, lihiyos oid isrosit l'sata, to respond with another isrosit l'sata, because he knows he has the tools to ground that inspiration. He can then use it to put his effort in again, to push himself even harder. Good morning. Do you have a copy? Don't. Okay. I don't have another copy now. Are you able to share with Alona? Yeah? Remind me your name. Jessie. That's right. Okay, so I thought you were Jessie. Now remind me your name. Hadassah, right. Okay. Jessie, Hadassah, and then there was Chaya. She's not here. Okay. Perfect. Hadassah is easy to remember because I'm Esther. So
there's a
Chaya.
lady named Chaya who came the other day.
She came.
She's Russian.
Yes. Okay, so we're just getting
like 2 days ago.
Okay, beautiful. Are we following so far? If I were to ask you, what's the difference between, it's the same term, Isrosit l'sata, let's say, right? What's the difference between an Isrosit l'sata that comes before God awakened me and aroused me versus after, right? We know the difference. The difference is that if it came from me, it changed me. And if it changed me, then when God responds by inspiring me, I am a person who's able to actually use the inspiration from God in a way that's applicable to me, and that will then spear and motivate another Isrosit l'sata. Okay? So this is why the Alter Rebbe says it starts a cycle, like a compounding spiritual compounding interest, when I actually put the work in first, instead of waiting for the inspiration to come. Now the Alter Rebbe is going to say this is not the case when the cycle is the other way around, where God initiates and we're just like, oh, this is beautiful, this is lovely, assuming this is going to last forever, but internally I don't have the capacity and the tools to actually ground that and make it relevant for me in my personal life. So Mashenkin. So let's just read the English quickly. The cycle of a person working on getting excited about Hashem during prayer and then experiencing Hashem's closeness is a cycle that can be perpetuated. Since his experience of Hashem's closeness came as a result of his hard work, he truly appreciates it and internalizes it. And it gives him the motivation to try again to work in prayer to obtain recognition and emotion for Hashem. So it's a cycle that can then last forever. Mashe Enken, this is not the case. When there isn't that hard work put in, we said that that's the soul work, the Yigiyas Basar, and the work of the flesh, milamata, from below, from our efforts down here. Rak Mashen is Ora Nafsho. His soul has only been awakened because God shone his countenance on him from above. Let's see. He did not prepare his heart to then awaken himself. Then it's possible that there will be chaylef va'ayver ha'ispalas. Chaylef means it will switch. Va'over means it will pass. Hispalas, the excitement. Ve'ein lakiyam, and it doesn't last. It doesn't have what to hold on to. Because the moment that this inspiration leaves, and by the way, almost the definition of inspiration is that it cannot be constant. The moment inspiration becomes constant, it becomes reality. Exactly. It's like a miracle, right? A miracle, the moment it becomes constant, it's called nature, right? So the definition of an of an inspiration from above. And that, again, that could be in the context, not necessarily of just like this crazy prophecy or something. It could be the context of that I'm sitting in a class and a teacher who was teaching me Torah spoke to me in such a way that just like got me so excited. Good morning. The definition of that is that it's fleeting. Okay? So the moment that this inspiration leaves, which it always will, okay? In the moment, we convince ourselves that this is the way it's going to be forever. And that's not the case ever, okay? The rule is that it's temporary. So the moment that this inspiration leaves, because these inspirations, these times where God wakes us up are only at specific auspicious times. And these three words are the most important, I think, of the whole mind. Haya, kalai, haya. Once that inspiration leaves, haya, it will be kalai haya, as if it never was. Okay? If we haven't done the work beforehand to hold on to that inspiration, if we haven't done the work afterwards, after the inspiration, to ground that inspiration, to say, how does this talk to me as an individual person with my individual challenges? How is this real in my life, in my circumstances, where I come from? Haya kalai haya. Not only will it have left, it will leave, and you will remain the exact same person as beforehand. Okay? Haya kalai haya hayespadas. It will be as if you never got excited in the first place, which is such a chaval, right? It's a waste. God is saying, I want to inspire you. I want to bring you close. I'm giving you a free gift. And if we don't do something with that, it's as if we never got the free gift. And this is, by the way, a rule not only with our spiritual lives, but with anything that we get for free. If we just ride the wave of the free things we get, the moment that the free things stop coming, we remain the exact same person, all the way back to square one. Me'achar, since the reason that it's haya kalai haya, that he remains the same person is, since shalai haisarak v'sibas ha'ara v'har al yana, because the only reason for why he was actually inspired was because it came from God, was because it was gifted to him for free. It wasn't something that he had earned. Even though, again, in the moment, very often we justify those inspirations. We justify the things we get for free, and we convince ourselves that I actually earned it, right? This is something that I've noticed. This is a parenting example, so I don't know how relevant it is, but I've noticed this with myself and with others, that they'll sit and be like, I figured out like how to parent, like, this age, I know how to parent this kid. And then you look at all the other parents who are struggling with that age group and you're like, I know what I'm doing. And then what happens? God gives you another kid. And then you're like, I get it now. It had nothing to do with my parenting and everything to do with the temperament of the kid. Not to say that parenting, chinuch and education is huge, but very often we take credit, and I've seen this like in parenting, and I've seen this with other parents. We take credit for like our child's good behavior when you just happen to have like a child that had that temperament. Wait until you get the next kid. They have a joke. I don't know. Is anyone the second in their family here? They say that the second kids are like these wild. You're like, you think you figured it out with your first, and actually it wasn't you, it was the kid. And then you get a wake up call. And it's not just like that with parenting. It's like that with everything. I figured out, how to take care of myself when I'm on my own. And other people, they're struggling because they just don't know it yet. And then something happens and hits you. You're like, wait, maybe I figured it out because God was actually helping me, right? Or there were all these people around me who were helping me, who were propping me up. And when that disappears, we realize, wait, that wasn't me. That was everything around me giving things to me for free. And because I didn't appreciate that they were for free, I didn't do the work that I need to do to make it real for me. And this, by the way, is a very big lesson of the Seder. The Seder night is all about the things that we get for free. The Seder night is, I think, the one night of the year which is pure Isrus de Leila. Any other time we have an arousal and awakening from above throughout the year, like Shavuot, right? God gave us the Torah for free, as in How could we possibly have earned the Torah? Right? It's a gift. As we say, Hashem gave us a present, which was the Torah, right? He gave us the gift of the Torah. But we did earn it to some extent. We had Svirta Omer. You could say that on, it's described that on Yom Kippur, there's an Isusa de Le'ela, when you're in shul and everyone's, and you feel excited. But that was hopefully preceded by the work that you put in Elul, and the teshuvah that you did, right? The one
Not
time,
always.
not always, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there is a correlation to how much you're going to feel the holiday generally versus how much work you put in before, right? The more you prepared yourself and you know where you're, like what this is, you can say that the under the chuppah, at the time at the wedding, is an Isra Zila'el where you feel something. But also, you got to put the work in before. The more you learn about the significance of the day and the significance of these things, the more you're going to feel. You could say that mikvah is an Isra Zila'ela. It's a time where there's now these are not yet relevant right now, but people sometimes will talk about how incredible their mikvah experience was, and I'm always just like, I don't know what you're talking about. Until I realized that it wasn't just because they happened to dunk in the same water and feel something else. It's because they prepared, because they learned things, they got into it, and then they felt, right? The one time we have Isra D'Leila for the sake of Isra D'Leila is the night of Pesach. The night of Pesach is the night where God took us out of Egypt. We didn't deserve it at all. It was pure God's gift to us. And that's what we're really celebrating at the Seder. That's what we're celebrating. And I know we're past that, but make a note for next year that it's a time to really take stock of what are all the things that God gave me for free in my life that I've been taking for granted, or that I've actually not only taking for granted, claiming as my own. And to really sit with that and appreciate that. And then the next day, what do we do straight away? The day after Pesach, the Omer. Mimachras HaShabbos, which is in Spain, is Mimachras HaPesach. We start to count the Omer. We start to say, now that I appreciate all these things that I did not earn, that were given to me for free, now let me ground that. Now let me make that real for me. Now let me start to put the work in. So a pure Isra de Le'ela, the downside of that is that, well, first of all, the reality of any Isra de Le'ela is that it is temporary. It is fleeting by definition. And the second is that it's not something that you earned, and therefore we have to ground it straight away, make it relevant, and do the annoying. It's the hardest thing to do in those moments. If anyone's had that inspiration, I don't know, we had Nechama sharing a beautiful example of that, coming to Jerusalem, not having done any preparing and being like, wow, I feel something, right? In those moments of that, wow, this is the truth, this is real, this is so exciting. The hardest, most annoying thing to do is to be like, okay, where am I here? How do I fall in? And to take a look at yourself and be like, okay, where do I need to change and improve? It's so the opposite of that experience. And it's humbling, but it's almost embarrassing sometimes. Like, I felt this huge, I felt God speak to me, and now the thing I'm working on is making sure that I, speak respectfully to my mom on the phone. Like, really? Like, this is, and that's exactly what we need to be doing. And that's exactly what Spirit Omer is about. It's about those little changes after those incredible miracles that we experience. Yes.
When you experience it, Isra de Le'ela, how do you know where you need to put in the work? Like, is it just like, oh, like you need to work hard in every single aspect of your life, or is it like there's like one specific?
So we're going to be getting to that, where the Alter was going to say that we need to get to know our animal soul. The answer is you need to be in constant conversation with your animal soul and not leaving that behind and being like, oh, I'll deal with you later. Right now I'm riding the wave of my spiritual soul and I'm feeling all this exciting stuff with my godly soul. And the more we know our animal soul, which is ourselves, right? Our animal soul is us. The more we know ourselves and we're real with ourselves and we don't lie to ourselves, we'll have the answers. We'll know, oh, this is where I've been struggling. This is self-awareness, right?
But we could be struggling in so many different areas, and like it could be overwhelming. Like, you need to
yes,
be specific. I don't know.
So there's a mimer that I really want to learn with you after this mimer. The lucky thing is first Omer is a while, so we have time for it. Although it is also connected to Lag BaOmer, so I'm hoping to get in there, where the Rebbe talks about this idea of that this concept of Spirit Omer. Okay, so now you need to change your animal soul in 7 weeks. It's very big, and like where do we start? And what's actually expected of us to change? What's in our ability to change? What's not? The answer is that, and hopefully we'll get to see the process inside and how the Rebbe explains it, is that God doesn't expect us in our day and age right now to change the midos. Now, when we hear midos, we think different things, okay, depending on how you grew up. Midos, the sephiras, the emotions of the animal soul. Okay? God expects us to change the way that we express those emotions out in the world, the behavior. Okay? And this is why I really want to learn the mind with you, because it's people come to Sphere Summer and they're like, oh my God, like I need to change the 7 emotions of my animal soul in 7 weeks. Like what? The Rebbe Rashab once told his wife, Rebbe Shemtov, he was the fifth Lubavitcher Rebbe, yes, 5th, and he was someone who took avoda seriously to another level from when he was a little child. Said, I haven't even managed to truly change one of my midos. Now, midos, sometimes we think of midos tovos, like midos, my emotions, like the internal spiritual makeup of my soul, okay? And so when you say, where do we start? We start by the little things, and that's why we have 49 days. We take those 7 big emotions, we break them up to the tiniest little expressions. How do I express my chesed through the channel of Gevurah? And am I doing that, and the Rebbe in that mimer breaks down what that looks like. So it starts with knowing ourselves, and then knowing what we can take on also. And really, the idea of a hachlata, you're familiar with this idea of hachlata? You can have a farbrengen. Farbrengen is just a leila, right? Although again, mixed in with this, we put the food down so that the animal soul is calm and happy. But it's a time where we're getting into it and we're getting inspired. Hopefully we have a good farbrengen. And we're like, wow, we're in the clouds. And then how do we end off the farbrengen with the most annoying thing? Okay, who's going to take on a hachlata now, right? Like, okay. And then you have to take a look at, well, okay, a hachlata. Well, then you have to take all that inspiration and be like, where am I struggling? Where do I need to change? And the Rebbe was very into that the hachlata should be something manageable, something that you don't, not an aspiration, but actually something you could tomorrow morning or even tonight after the brain before going to sleep, you can implement. And something actionable and something within a certain time frame. So like from now and for forever, I am now putting patient. It's like this week, when I speak to this person, I'm going to be patient. It's
2 more minutes.
For 2 more minutes. And that, there was someone who once came to the Rebbe, now I'm not remembering all the details of the story, but he came to the Rebbe and asked, it was an ongoing conversation that they had, and the Rebbe then gave him 2 tips for taking on hachlata. Number 1, it needs to be able to be taken on right away. Something, if you take on this hachlata, start today. Tomorrow I'm going to today, right? And I've heard this in terms of like people saying taking on good habits, like running. Don't be like tomorrow I'm starting running. Like you want to start running, go and run today. Same thing with our spiritual life. It needs to be something that's able to be applied today. And if you're like, oh well, today is like, then it's probably not a good hachlata. It's probably too much in the aspiration and not in the practical area of implementation. And the second thing that the Rebbe said was that it needs to be something that you believe that you can do. Okay, you need to really believe it. And if there's a part of you that's like, oh, that sounds so nice, but there's a voice in your head that's like, I don't think I can do that, you're starting too big. Mm-hmm. And it's embarrassing sometimes, the hachlatas that we end up having to take on, okay? If we have to, after all that inspiration and that talk of that spiritual time, it's like, this is the thing I'm struggling with, and this is how much I think I can go. 1 week of, again, patience with one person, it's like, really? But the humility of taking our animal soul into account in those moments of inspiration. And then the hard work that needs to go, that happens along with that. That's where change happens. That's where change happens. Did that answer your question?
Yeah. Can you just repeat? You said like Hashem doesn't expect us to change the 7 midos. He expects us
to change the way that we express those emotions outward. So you don't always have to be in a good mood. But you do always, okay, in terms of the goal, in terms of what God expects from us, need to be kind and respectful to other people. To expect yourself to never be in a bad mood, you're setting yourself up for failure from the onset. To expect that after 7 weeks of Sephira, you're never going to get angry again, you're setting yourself up for failure. But to say, oh, I've proven to myself that for 7 weeks, I can control my anger when this thing happens. And I can learn tools to express that and channel it in a healthy way. whoa, after 7 weeks, you're going to believe in your ability to change. Okay. And this is really what that idea of communicating with the animal soul is about. And it's, again, I'll say it again, I'll say it so many times, it's a really annoying thing to do, especially when maybe you're sitting around the table here and you have all these teachers, you're getting so excited, you're learning Torah, and it's like, this is amazing. And it's like, oh wait, but I need to deal with that, like, that thing going on at home, right? I need to deal with that thing in my past that I pushed away. I need to deal with, it's annoying, but it's where the real change happens. Do we start reading on this top of page 16?
Yeah.
Right. So he said, we need to know that these inspirations that happen are only at auspicious times. Maybe you have a really lucky opportunity that you could spend a year or a semester or a few weeks in Jerusalem, in Israel, in Mayanot, it's an auspicious time. It's not the day-to-day reality that you can expect from your Jewish journey. And so number one, accepting that. And number two, saying, okay, what am I going to do with that to ground it? Lachain, therefore, the histale ka'or, when that light leaves, the teila ha'ava, the love that came as a result of that light, the inspiration, the feelings that came as a result, leave as well. Shenista'ef mina, because they're only a direct result of that inspiration, not a direct result of something that we have had born within us. And the 40 chapters, end of 38, the chapters 40, few of the 40 chapters in Tanya talk about the different levels of love. It talks about the love that we kind of give birth to versus the love that God gives us. And it's always the case that the love that God gives us is a higher love. It's more exciting love. But the love that we toil to actually experience is the most precious love. It's sustainable. And that's the goal. The goal is not, God doesn't want us to be the most religious possible version of ourselves for the next month. And then bye, right? That's not the goal. The goal is that we should have an ongoing, real, intimate relationship with God for our entire life. And the way that we do one versus the other looks very, very different. Okay?
Do they talk about the other side of the coin with like meaning, so you're saying like if you get a gift from God of inspiration and then it goes away and you're like, oh, that was all me, and it's like, actually no, it wasn't. The other side of the coin being like, wow, I'm doing something that I'm really afraid to do and actually I'm seeing myself show up differently, meaning that I did ground it and like I did work, and meaning like I don't have to have so much fear, because not like it was just me, it was God too, right? But I think especially with women, there's like this idea of like, I'm scared. Do you know what I mean? I don't know. That's little thoughts.
It sounds like you're talking about like when we put in the hard work first and then
Take that leap almost, right? To initiating. Is that what you're saying? That like fear that comes with the initiation of the process?
Or like, I'll give like a really clear example. I don't drink anymore. I did for a long time. I don't spend a long time. But I remember when I would first go to like weddings or something, and I would be like so afraid to be around alcohol and like what are people going to do? And then I would get there and be like, oh, I'm literally fine. Like what just happened? You know, it was like a whole new experience. And then I learned, oh, I don't have to be so afraid. Like and that was a result of like a lot of work that I did. It wasn't like overnight, but meaning like you don't have to be afraid to walk through your life. And it's okay maybe to be like, wow, I did work really hard with God on that.
Sounds like you're so at least.
Right. Right. That feeling of trust that you had, that ability to be okay in that environment was only possible because of all the work that you put in beforehand, right?
Yes.
But also, I think here's maybe where you're alluding to the catch-22 of that is that the work that goes beforehand means that we have to start off somewhere. I mean, maybe we need to start off by being in an environment like that. There's no choice. You got to go to the wedding. You're haven't done the work. You're scared. But in that push, and you find yourself there. And that's the crazy thing, that a lot of our relationship with God and to change starts off with a leap of faith, right? With a belief in ourselves. Because if I don't believe that I actually have the ability to change, we're never going to start. And if I never start and I'm always waiting for God to save me or for the inspiration to come to change, so absolutely, that getting over that fear. And again, also that I think that humility of understanding, like, this is where I've got to start. Like, yeah, my friends, maybe they're all the things they're working on are not what I'm working on. So yeah, and that also I think comes with fear, maybe that I'm starting small, but I'm taking that first step. It's the idea of taking the first step. And the Jewish people had to take a leap of faith to go into the desert, right? There was no food in the desert. There was no water in the desert. And they took that leap of faith, and then they were able to start to do the work and actually prepare themselves to be a vessel to receive the Torah. So I think that's definitely a very important part of it. And I think it comes down to that we need to know that we need to believe in our ability to change. And I think a lot of us, and I definitely have this attitude to a certain extent and working on it. When I look at the Sfira Omer time, it's a time to really invest in change. There's a part of me that's laughing a little bit, like, yeah, right. How many times have I had a Sfira Omer experience where Shavuot comes and I'm literally the same person, right? And so to believe that, no, actually, if I do very small things during these 7 weeks, now, am I going to be a completely different person? Not necessarily. Am I going to have had positive change? Absolutely. And it's like, there's a Yetzer Hara there which laughs at this, like, oh, yeah, yes, for sure. 7 weeks later, you're a different person, right? And then you get all these little daily meditations and daily things. You're like, yeah, that's for sure that's what's going to do it. No way, right? It's actually believing that God believes in us to change, and we need to believe in ourselves. And then also to remember that the change doesn't necessarily look the way we expect it to, which is that after 7 weeks, I'm standing on Shavuot and I'm an angel. It's like, no, you still got issues, but maybe this one area you've actually seen some progress. Now the Alter Rebbe is going to bring us an example for this idea from the Torah, from the Gemara. And the Alter Rebbe does this quite a lot, where in bringing a Chassidic idea, he'll ground it in Nigla, it's called. Nigla means the revealed Torah. Chassidut comes much more from what we call the concealed, hidden parts of Torah, the Sod, and based on Kabbalah. So the Alter Rebbe now is taking what he just taught us, this idea that when we initiate the relationship with God, it creates a relationship that's sustainable, that can last, as opposed to when we wait for God to inspire us, that's something that's temporary and fleeting. And the example he's going to bring us, and I hope nobody gets offended here, is from the Gemara Nita. So I just want to make sure we understand it. Actually, it was a few weeks parsha ago. It's a pasuk from the Torah. Ish mazriya tchila yoledes zachar. Anyone heard this? Yeah. This pasuk isn't from the Torah, but it's based on. This pasuk is from the Torah. Tazriya, Parshas Tazriya. Is this the whole
one about
Yes. Okay, but it's yes. Okay, so it's Vayikra. We just had it a few parshas ago.
It says Vayikra Yud.
Brachais Nida.
It says
Vayikra
Yud Beis.
Right. Okay. Yes. Vayikra Yud Beis. The pasuk is Isha ki tazriya v'yalda zachar. A woman, when she gets pregnant, gets seed, v'yalda zachar, and then she gives birth to a male child, and then it says all the laws of Nida, basically how long she's impure for, etc. And then okay. And then the Gemara on that verse says Isha mazriya tchila. Ish mazriya tchila. When a man gives seed first, yoledes nekeva, a female is born. And then Isha mazras tchila, when a woman gives seed first, yoledes zachar, a male is born.
What? A woman gives seed?
Okay, so yeah, that's where it's. Now, what does this mean practically? A woman doesn't give seed, right? So the way that it's like on the surface understood is, from what I understand, it's like if this is how it's made. From what I understand, it's understood. If the man climaxes first, then he has nekeva. If the woman climaxes first, he has a zachar. This is not a formula. This is not like a physical thing, okay? Okay? Like, otherwise, every Jewish person would have exactly what gender they wanted. So, but this is like the general way. Now, what does that mean? Because what's the connection with women's climax and giving seed? Now, I have heard one explanation I'm going to share it with you because it helped me, was that before the sin of the Eitz Hadas, before Adam and Chava ate from the tree, the way that a woman's ovulation was stimulated during intercourse, and she would actually give seed, give seed during that moment. And so, yeah, and apparently, okay, so you guys can check this out. Snails have this. Okay. that they ovulate during intercourse. During intercourse, something like that. You could go check it out. This is what I heard, and I haven't double checked it. But the idea I have heard an idea. I'm pretty sure it was from Rabbi Yossi Jacobson when I learned something on this Gemara with him, not with him physically, but from a class of his online. That he said that before the chet, the sin, that not the sin of the golden calf, the sin of eating from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, that this was the way that men and women actually, just as a man can only be fertile when he, ejaculates, so too a woman was only able to. Okay, so that's the most I know. So if you have more questions, you can ask them, but I don't know if I can help. But the way we're understanding it here,
actually make women way more fertile because now it's only 2 days out of the month.
right? It would mean a lot of different things. It would mean a lot of different things. And is that the way things are going to be when Mashiach comes? I don't know.
Every single time that we would have intercourse.
Well, they do say that, like, when Mashiach comes, we're going to have babies every day. So, yeah.
There's a lot of weird stuff about having babies in Judaism. I heard that, like, in Egypt, like, they were, like, having, like, 9 babies at a time.
6 babies at a time. Sextuplets. A litter. Oh my gosh. I didn't think of it that way.
There's some weird Gemaras that make me question.
So that is actually quite believable in terms of, you see the way that the Jewish people copulated during that time. Started out from like 70 people coming down, and the amount of people that left after, like, a bunch of them also died in the plague of darkness, and a bunch of them, I mean, they were being persecuted and killed, and the children were being thrown in the river, and yet so many Jews still, like, left Egypt, right? Now this is making me think of, like, okay, just a side thought was coming up, so I'm sharing, like, this idea that people are saying that there's a genocide in Gaza, and then you look at how many, the birth rate, right? But so the Jewish people are going through a genocide, okay, in Egypt. I mean, when there were not enough bricks to build not the pyramid, or maybe the pyramid, whatever they were building, they took, is horrific. They took Jewish babies, and they, right, bathed in Jewish blood every single day. So there was a genocide going on, and yet, like, there were a lot of Jews who left Egypt, right? So you could say either there wasn't actually a genocide, which is like what's going on in Gaza, or women were having a lot of babies. So that one actually, like, does fit even with the pshat, like with the pshat as well. And we know that there are women who have had 6 babies at a time.
Yeah,
this is a thing.
It's possible.
Yes, there was
Rare.
a woman in our community in Cape Town whose mother, she was the oldest, and then her mother had 5 or 6 babies that all survived.
Whoa.
And then she ran away. Her mother ran away. Yeah, which, like, honestly, yeah. So that was her story, I remember. But I remember her telling me that they all survived, and it was the first time that had ever happened in South Africa. It was like the first day. She was all over the news and got all these free diapers and everything. Anyway, this is going on a real side point here. But when we're looking at this verse, when we're looking at this concept from the Gemara, everybody nobody even in the Gemara understands it literally, right? Again, otherwise it'd be like, we have the formula, here you go, this is how you choose the gender of your child, or have a girl, right? So people, so all the commentators are explaining it as a spiritual idea, but in different ways. The way that Chassidus sees it in this context, there's different explanations for this verse, is that when we say ish mazriya tchila, when a man gives seed first, or initiates first, that the ish is referring to, when it comes to a relationship with God, we have there's a male-female dynamic going on when it comes to Knesset Yisrael, the Jewish people, and God. Who's the male in the relationship? God. and the female in the relationship is the Jewish people. We are called God's bride, right? So in the context of the saying that a man, when he gives seed first, is talking about God. When God initiates and gives us inspiration first, what is born? Yoledes nekeva, a female is born. Now, it's brought also in the Gemara that Nashin Daitam Kales. Has anyone heard this before? Nashin Daitam Kales. Now, if anyone ever uses that against you, bring them to me. That's not okay.
What does that mean?
Nashin Daitam Kales means that women's das, which is a certain level of understanding, is kales, is light, is weak. Okay? It also says that women have a bina yasera, have additional bina. So, that's why I said, if anyone tries to use that against you, bring them to me. I'll put them straight. What's the idea? What's this talking about? There's different levels of intellect. There's chachma, bina, das. Each one has pros and cons. For those of you who were here when we learned about das, who was here when we learned about das? We had a class on it. Anyone remember? In the context of which mimer? I don't remember now. I think the nisyonis, the mimer of the tests. At the end, we said that the reason why God tests us is for das. Das, 10:25. I'll give you a brief idea about das tomorrow, so that we can actually understand what it means, noshin, dais, and kales. But das is the idea of integrating something, of taking that which we know and then actually having the consistency to stick with it. Okay? I don't have a problem with noshin, dais, kales just because I know myself, and this idea of that stable mood and that consistency and knowing one thing and just sticking with it. I know for myself, my husband's much stronger in that than me. Bina and understanding and certain intuitions and things women have more. So I don't see it as a derogatory thing, but we'll open it up tomorrow a little bit. What does that mean, nashin, dais, and kales? And what does that therefore mean? That if God initiates, a female is born. What's the significance of a female being born as opposed to a male when God initiates, and a male being born as opposed to a female when the woman initiates, when the Jewish people initiate? So we will, just for lack of time, hopefully everyone's okay with leaving off. I hope I didn't offend anyone with this. Not nashin, nashin, dais, and kales. We'll open that up tomorrow a little bit more. Okay. Anyone have questions on what we learned today? Questions, comments? Good. We did not finish